13 years ago, an institution that believed they could make a difference in the lives of people living with autism set out on a journey. This journey was to improve the lives of people living with autism by providing them the much-needed support to their families, to their caregivers as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe at this point in time, GTBank deserves another round of applause. For the second year running, Ghana is a beneficiary of this great initiative, and today we're here to empower voices for autism. A round of applause also for yourselves for being a part of this great initiative. My name is Seth Kusi, and I am delighted to be part of this life-changing advocacy drive where we create awareness, we promote advocacy, we show acceptance, offer assistance, and show appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. At this point in time, I'd want to introduce a lady who I admire so much to do the official introductions and recognitions of dignitaries. I'd like to call upon Agnes Owusu Afram, Divisional Head, Corporate Communications and Experience. A bigger round of applause for her as she comes upstage. The walk is quite long, so I need you to sustain your clap for her.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're all warmly welcome to 2023 GTBank Autism Workshop. This has specially been put together for our very special persons living with autism, their families and caregivers. Today's workshop is a first of its kind in Ghana, and we are honored to have you all here with us this morning. We are especially excited to have some important personalities gracing today's occasion, most of them on a rather short notice. Our special guest speaker for this year's awareness workshop is a man who has distinguished himself in the He's a director of a health service. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to introduce you to a gentleman, our managing director, Mr. Thomas John, who he is also the project's lead for this year's Autism Workshop and Consultation. Thank you for coming, sir. Putting together a special program of this magnitude demands hard work. We are excited to have a presentation of the hard-working men and women whose unrelenting efforts have made this possible to put this together this year. Ladies and gentlemen, our team from Lagos, GTBank PLC. Shall we see you upstanding? Thank you for coming. Thank you. The GTBank team in Ghana, management and staff are also here to support. They've made this happen. Team, thank you so much for coming. Now we are gathered here to take insights from subject matter experts on an area that has received little to no attention in Ghana and Africa at large. It is great to have in our midst world-renowned specialists who will act as facilitators for today's workshop and subsequently will be the consultants for our one-on-one consultation from tomorrow through to Saturday. My doctor's consultants, once I mention your name, kindly step up stage for me. We have our board certified behavior analyst, Larry and Camilla. Please join us upstage. We also have Camille Proctor, who is a special needs advocate. We have Whitney, a certified behavior analyst. We have Susie. Please join us, Susie, an international behavior analyst. We have Tommy, a speech pathologist. We also have Taiwo, an occupational therapist, Mashidat, a psychiatrist, Ololade, a speech language pathologist, Oladipo, a psychiatrist. We have John Paul, an award-winning singer and autism support specialist. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, John. We also have Dr. Ade, our speech therapist, and Dr. Ita. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The joy for us for this year is we have the Ghana team fully supporting. Our consultants, our therapists from Ghana, kindly join us upstage. We have Emma, Beatrice, Anne, Sonia, Josephine, Martha, Akonobia Dazi. Please join us upstage, our Ghana consultants. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming. Throughout the session today, two parts of the session. This morning, we'll break off at lunch, and then we will continue with our breakout sessions. These will be our therapists and our consultants for the workshop. Through tomorrow, from tomorrow through to Saturday, we should have the consultation one-on-one also on this premise. Our consultants, our therapists, your audience, thank you so much.
Thank you so much to our consultants and therapists. You can have your seats now. Please, today we'll be doing a lot of clapping, so they take their seats. Let's just acknowledge them. They put in so much hard work, and it is not easy to be in their field, but we acknowledge your willingness and your great acceptance. Another round of applause for them as they take their seats. At this juncture, I will take a poem from Esther Yaira Elewoko, and is entitled A Scream for Acceptance. Another round of applause for her as she comes to deliver.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Can we do something simple for everybody? Can we clap our hands for the mothers who have children with autism? I really love that clap. Do it again. They are so strong, and so we need to appreciate them. Can we clap for the men, their fathers? Can we also clap for the siblings? They're also supportive. And can you clap for yourself for being here? Just the heart that you have to come here and support all of them is so amazing. You are amazing. Clap for yourself. I will tell you a story. When I was about 12, in a little community, there lived a girl, a young woman. She was called Wecha, and Wecha was a good storyteller. She was almost like the town gossip. Wecha was also Johnny Walker. She could walk the whole community, and she would bring you stories from far and beyond. And all those times we enjoyed Wecha's stories, we never sat close to her. For some reason, we were told that Wecha's speech could cause something to us. And so Wecha would be far away, and she was loud. And so that wasn't a bother to her. Sadly, Wecha was knocked down by a car. She had an epileptic attack, and she died. I had a friend, Lucy. That girl was kind. And she was so good at Ampe. There was no way you would beat Lucy. Never. But no one visited Lucy's house. Lucy was always home with her sister. And so, as curious as I was, I would always go to Lucy's house. And I'll go and play there. And Lucy was so welcoming. And all the times I visited Lucy, I realized she had who I thought was her younger brother. And she would back him. And we would play ampe together. We would gossip a little, and I would head home. Soon, stories got to my mother that I was visiting the forbidden home. And some way, somehow, Lucy's brother could infect me with something. Actually, that wasn't her younger brother. That was her elderly brother. And she was backing her elderly brother every day since she was born. I stopped visiting Lucy's house because the pressure got so much for my mother, and so she stopped me. Eventually, Lucy and her siblings moved out, and that was how we lost that friendship. I've never seen her ever since. Not so long ago, there was this girl, Monica. Monica reminded me so much of Wecha. She was a good storyteller as well, but she was 12. Monica would come and say stuff, and I was intrigued. Monica was raped at 12, and so social warfare took her. And I haven't seen her too. In university, about 2 years ago, we had an autism workshop. And in that workshop, our lecturers told us to research about autism. So I was like, okay, let me just do something. So I searched, and I found a nurse's expose on autism and how children in the north were treated. They were killed. And I was shocked. What could be wrong? The next day, we had the workshop, and this woman, such courageous, gorgeous woman, she mounted the stage, and her son was seated right in front, and she said, "Everybody say hi to my son, Kofi." And her son, he was so handsome, elegant. He had his leg crossed, and he waved back at us. Of course, he had some crashes. And she said to us, "My son has autism." And we were shocked. "He has autism?" She said, "Yes. Before the show ends, you will see one of his signs and wonders." And obviously, by the time she finished her speech with us, Kofi walked to the stage and told Mama he needed to use the washroom. Mama dropped everything and sent Kofi. When she came back, she told us Kofi has 5 minutes between the time he walks up to you and the time you send him to the washroom. If you create a mess, that's your mess. And so in all these instances where I met Kofi and I was intrigued, she did something. She asked us to hug Kofi. And for the first time in my life, I was so close to somebody with autism. I was so close with somebody who has special needs. And I realized that their saliva didn't do anything to me. Their touch didn't harm me. And so the society where I grew up created this scary image that prevented me from being close to these people. If I wasn't close to Kofi that day, if I hadn't had a chance to give him a hug, I may have been living in that world, scared that some way, somehow, their speed, their touch could destroy me. And so just by the hug that I hugged Kofi, his words whispered in my ear. And so this is the title of the poem, A Scream for Acceptance. A scream for what Kofi said to me that day. I was born unique. In a world of butterflies and no flaws, I was born different. Wait. I hear wails. I hear cries. Long, long, long ago, I heard, abort. It would be no sin at all. I heard Mama's cries. I heard her asking what did I do to deserve this? I heard her desperately asking for solution. My God, my God, my God, what did I do wrong? They say it's a curse. They call me cursed. They wouldn't look at me. Pregnant women wouldn't look at me at all. Children don't play with me. They speak to me rudely. They always point fingers. But I am only a survivor. I am only a fighter who is on this journey for my brothers and siblings who never survived this. Hear. Open your ears and hear. Hear the screams from the faraway land. Hear the tears dropping from their tortured skins, brutally murdered. Hear. These are their tortured skeletons I am leaving here. Hear, you murderers. Those blades in your mouth sent those kids away without tears and grave. Those blades in your heart killed those children. You could have helped. You could have saved. Those mothers only asked for help, but your sharp mouth made them give those kids away. Here, I bring you their caskets mixed with skeletons and dried up water from the graves you left them, without tears and graves. When you are alone, you pretend to care. When you are in a group, you stare and point, giving a mischievous stare. Are you okay? Are you satisfied with killing somebody else's child and having yours at home, laughing at their own funny jokes, sending them on errands and denying mothers of children they couldn't have and hold? Are you okay? Are you satisfied? For once, drop your pretense and give all those children your words sent without tears and grave a befitting burial. And look at me with love. Embrace me. I am not contagious. Love me. My spit don't hurt. Talk to me. I am only but human. This is my scream for acceptance. Whenever you see me, a smile is enough. Love me. Love me. Love me. My name is Esther Yaira Loko. You can call me Yaira Xylophone. Thank you.
I believe Esther deserves a much greater round of applause for telling the story so vividly, for telling the story with so much emotion. Esther, thank you so much. We are here to make a change. We are here to make a difference in the lives of people living with autism. Thank you once again. Another round of applause for Esther. Ladies and gentlemen, in every great machinery, the engine is very important. The engine is never seen. At the helm of the GTBank engine is a great man who has one of the brightest smiles I've ever seen. And he's not a friend of the camera, by the way. So with an encouraging round of applause, let's welcome John Thomas, MD of GTBank, as he comes to give us his welcome remarks. A last one for him as he comes up here.
that's funny. You know how. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Thomas Atajon. Coming here this morning, I learned something new. That when they give this sign, it implies you have to drop something. I tried. Welcome, everyone. I'm personally very touched coming to this program. 13 years ago when it started, I didn't have a clue what it was. And I didn't pay attention to it in the earlier years, so the first 2-3 years, until I had a personal encounter. It's something the society should give much more attention to. Very, 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 very personal feeling about it. And that's why GTBank has taken it upon itself to create more awareness. I have a speech here, but I'm not sure the speech is necessary. I've had 1 or 2 speakers already. So just speak directly to reach more people outside this audience and them come to this conference. Here are the givers, the parents, and the little warriors or people with autism or special needs. Welcome, everyone. You may not hear from me throughout the program again, but I'll be here. I will attend practically all the sessions, and hopefully we'll learn 1 or 2 new things too. I'm supposed to talk about GTBank and our desire to continue to support this program. I'm not sure we need to convince anyone here today that the urge to continue to support autism is here. We want to convert it to a movement. You can hear me clearly. Just like in Nigeria, after 13 years, it's more than a CSR. It's more like a movement. That is what we want to achieve here in Ghana. This is year 2. When I came in here, I met a lady there who told us that we just speak about autism alone, that there's what they call ADH. I don't have a medical degree. I don't know what that means, but hopefully we'll incorporate it next time when we're designing this program, without taking much of your time so that we can have more time to listen to the experts. Welcome. And I wish all of us well, and we'll learn new things today. Thank you for coming.
I think he did his great machinery work. Please clap for him once again. As I said, today is just full of claps, so please clap for yourselves again for being here. Oh, I can't hear this, your clap. Thank you once again. The indefatigable MD of GTBank. We have a great man in our midst. We have a man who I'm going to introduce to you very shortly as the keynote, to give the keynote address. I'll give a short profile of our speaker. Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaje is the Director General of Ghana Health Service. He is a public health physician with over 20 years experience as a clinician and public health specialist. He has worked at all levels of the health service in Ghana with increasing responsibilities. Until his appointments as Director General, Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaje was the Director of Family Health Division of the Ghana Health Service, with responsibility for reproductive, maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health, and nutrition and health promotion. He has co-authored several publications, particularly in the areas of family planning, maternal health. He serves on various boards and committees, including National Domestic Violence Management Board, National Health Insurance Authority Board, Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, and Ghana AIDS Commission Board. He is also a member of the editorial board and peer review of the MEDICC Review Journal. Ladies and gentlemen, even if you were here in Ghana after the restrictions were lifted from COVID, this man still advised us to wear nose masks. That shows you how passionate he is about the health of Ghanaians. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd want us to give the greatest round of applause to Dr. Patrick Kuma Abuaje, Director General, Ghana Health Service, as he comes to give us his keynote address.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Also, a privilege. I learned something this morning too, not knowing that I even have some relationship with the MD, and I found out this morning. So we'll be engaging more now. The MD of the GTBank, Mr. Atta, Thomas John, other senior members of the bank, our parents, guardians, and teachers and children with autism, our colleague health professionals who are here, our experts assembled here, the media, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all thank the management and staff of Guarantee Trust Bank Limited for the gracious invitation extended to Ghana Health Service to be part of this year's Autism Workshop and consultation. This invitation not only depicts how thoughtful the bank is, but also underscores the bank's recognition to reach across the aisle and build partnerships with relevant stakeholders to enhance the health and well-being of our people. I'm particularly happy as Director General to be here this morning to highlight the role that the Ghana Health Service, and for that matter, the health sector plays. And Ghana Health has been the largest health service delivery agency in the country in the diagnosis, the treatment, and management of neurodevelopmental conditions, which until recently were perceived to be prevalent only in the West. And as the earlier speaker talked about the poet, he talked about how we made it as witchcraft, and I'm happy that things have changed. I'm sure we'd have called other people here to come and exercise how to get rid of these things out of the children. The autism spectrum disorders are neurodevelopmental conditions that impact on how a person perceives and socializes with others. This disorder or disability has been established scientifically to have many causal factors, including environmental and genetic factors. Over time, the epidemiology of disorders has evolved to make it a global health issue, with 1 out of every 100 children estimated globally to have autism. With this increasing global prevalence, Africa's share of the burden of autism has also been on an increasing trajectory. For example, while it is currently estimated that between 4.12 and 4.14 out of every 1,000 children in Equatorial Guinea, Somalia, and Uganda have autism, some 3.87 out of every 1,000 children in Ghana have autism. And that's quite huge. And I'm sure we don't know most of them. These statistics, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, undoubtedly paint the picture of the increasing prevalence of this disorder across the continent and in Ghana, and brings to the fore the question of assessment and care for the disorder. Ladies and gentlemen, as a service, we have sought to implement a wide range of life course interventions to optimize the development, health, and well-being and quality of life of persons with neurodevelopmental disorders, especially children. To improve assessment and care of the disorder, we have mainstreamed screening for childhood developmental disorders in the routine maternal and child welfare service as part of the early childhood development in the first 1,000 days of the child's life. And as you are aware, since 2018, we do routine assessment of children in KG2, that's 5 years old, just to look at their health, vaccination status, and even their neurodevelopmental performance. And so these are areas that we've actually started, especially in my previous life as the director of the family health. These are the things we introduced. We have also adopted a nurturing care framework by which we seek to develop public policies, programs and services that enables the community and parents promote good health, adequate nutrition, safety and security, responsive caregiving, and opportunities for early learning. And these are some of the things that we know are able to get kids out of this challenge. In terms of the service delivery, we have improved the availability of psychosocial interventions through the increased employment and training of doctors, clinical psychologists, speech and language therapists, and specialized services. But of course, these people, especially speech therapists, psychologists, are quite difficult to come about and employ them and also maintain them. And so these are some of the key challenges that we all together, as part of this advocacy and this campaign, will take care of and ensure that we motivate and promote this type of care to be available for care. In all this, it is our firm belief that, and as we are doing that, if we change the beginning of the story, we can change the whole story. And I believe this is what this whole matter is about. Colleagues, while we are this, it goes without saying that the healthcare needs of people with autism are complex and cut beyond the health sector to include other sectors such as education in particular, employment, social welfare, social protection, and even the private sector, as GTBank has led the way. It is therefore heartwarming that the Guaranteed Trust Bank, as part of the Corporate Social Responsibility Initiative, birthed this Autism Workshop and consultations to promote inclusivity and self-advocacy for persons on the autism spectrum. Ladies and gentlemen, this initiative, which ties in closely with our health promotion drive, will no doubt serve as a reference point for autism advocacy and intervention in Ghana and in Africa, providing complementary support and empowerment of thousands of people with neurodevelopmental disorders through education, advocacy, and consultation. This year's Autism Workshop and Consultation, which is being held from Tuesday the 1st August, that is today, to Saturday the 5th of August, is under the theme Empowering Voices for Autism. It kickstarts with a day's workshop where caregivers, parents, teachers will be educated and trained by a team of carefully selected specialists assembled here, most especially children living with autism spectrum disorder. Subsequently, it is my information that there will also be a one-on-one consultation where caregivers and with children living with autism spectrum disorder will meet a team of trained specialists from the US, the UK, Canada, Nigeria, and Ghana for in-depth discussion and assessment to support health needed. It is my understanding that the GTBank intends to walk this lifelong journey. It's been 13 years in Nigeria. We hope that we're going to start and even go faster with this long journey with persons living with autism by pledging to hold this program every year with modifications to the approach and duration based on our participants and stakeholder feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to tell the whole story. I leave the details to the experts assembled here. However, the Ghana Health Service, which I superintend over, is grateful for this impactful collaboration and promises to avail its expertise and power and manpower whenever needed by GTBank and any group supporting the autism process. Thank you very much.
Hello? Doctor, if you spare me just a few minutes. Hello, doctor. Yes. So doctor will do the symbolic launching of this year's initiative for us. So just a few words just to launch the program, and then we can continue.
Yeah, so on this note, I declare this year's autism consultation, or that's Empowering Voices for Autism, duly opened. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Let's keep clapping our hands for Doctor till he takes his seat. A very great presentation. Oh, let's give it up for great culture. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that's a great display. Please encourage him. Encourage him with your applause. I think they deserve a great round of applause. Fantastic. There's one great thing Dr. Patrick actually mentioned. He said, if we can change the beginning of the story, indeed we can change the end of it. And we are grateful to GTBank for this great journey that we are on with them. Please put your hands together again for GTBank for accepting this great responsibility on their shoulders. We'll move into the opening session, which will be taken by Lanre Du Yeli and Camilla Hay, who are both certified behavior analysts. And the topic will be behavior functions and interventions. This is the crust of the whole matter, the reason why we're here. Let's give it up to them as we take the opening session from them, if they can come up and take over. Today is a lot of hand clapping, so if you can, give it up for them as they come. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Akwaaba, Ghana. I got that right? Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for coming in today, and I really enjoyed the poem and the speeches that were given by the MD and the director of the Ghana Health Services. So welcome. You've heard a lot about autism, maybe, or a little bit, but whatever you've heard, you must have heard that people with autism have some very special behaviors that are different from the typically developing child. They could scream, they could hurt themselves, they could run around. They may even do things that you've never seen before. So it seems like, why is this child behaving this way? So today we want to talk to you about behaviors and the reasons why some behaviors occur and some interventions that may be used by parents or teachers to address some of those behaviors. So very quickly, can I see by show of hands if you're a parent of a child with special needs? Can you just raise your hand? Okay, good. Good. Thank you. What about teachers of children with special needs? Can you raise your hand? Okay.
Almost 50%.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. So we have parents and teachers. How about therapists? Show of hands. Okay. And the rest will be interested parties. Okay, good. Thank you. So today we'll be talking about a few things, but I just want to run through the objectives. So some of the things that we want to do at the end of our session is that we want to get people to the place where they can describe what really constitutes behavior. What is behavior? We also want you to be able to describe behaviors in general. Behaviors of typically developing children and behaviors of people with special needs, autism. And the role of the environment. The role of the things that happen after those behaviors. How do those things affect the behaviors of the children? We also want to be able to describe how you can measure behaviors and determine if the intervention that you have put in place is working or is not working. We want to be able to help you figure out how to conduct a simple analysis of behavior and to be able to determine the right strategies to implement. So that will be the things we'll talk about, and we'll look at them in 6 modules. Module number 1 is what is behavior. Number 2 is how do you observe and record behaviors. 3 is something called the ABC model. We'll go into detail about that. And then we'll go into functional assessments and then interventions. So, what is behavior? Behavior is really anything that a human being does. As I'm speaking to you, I'm engaging in behavior. As I'm gesticulating, this is behavior. As I'm blinking, it is behavior. If somebody screams back there, it is behavior. If I laugh, it is behavior. If I cry, it is behavior. So anything that a human being does is behavior, regardless of whether the person has special needs or not. If I hit myself, it is behavior. Behavior is everything that we do. Speaking is behavior as well. Okay, so sometimes a lot of us, we see somebody doing something, or maybe he puts up what we call an attitude, and we say, oh, that behavior is really not right. Well, attitude is not an action. Attitude is a label that people have placed on other behaviors. So as parents or teachers, if you find yourself at home or in the classroom with a child engaging in what you generally call disruptive behavior or misbehavior, don't stop at that. Specifically describe what the child is doing. There was a time that my son's teacher sent a note and said, speak with your son, he is misbehaving in class. And so I called him up and I said, you know what? You have to stop misbehaving in class. Your teacher is sending me notes. And he said, okay, Daddy. Next day, the note came again. I need you to speak with your son. He's misbehaving in class. And I called him and I said, if this note comes back tomorrow, you'll be in serious trouble and all your games are out. And next day, no notes. But on the Friday, he came up with a note again. And this time, the teacher said she'll have no choice than to send him to the principal's office. When I saw it, I was upset. And then I walked up to him as I was coming close. He said, Daddy, please. And I said, what did I tell you about this note? And he said, but I don't know what to do. And for me, that was kind of like, take a step back. He does not know what to do. What that means to me is that the instruction I've been giving him, he didn't get it. So I followed him to school on Monday and I said, teacher, can you tell me what this note means? And she said, what do you mean he's misbehaving in class? I said, I don't know what that means. What does he do in class that makes you write the notes? And she said, well, when we ask questions, he just says the answer. He does not keep his hand up. So, but if you look at it, his behavior disrupts the class. The order of the class is when the teacher asks a question, everybody raises their hands, and if you get called, then you can speak. But he was not doing that, and I said, why have you not been waiting for the teacher to call? He said, because she never calls me. But he's getting the label already that he's misbehaving. And I couldn't follow up appropriately because I erroneously just said, stop misbehaving. So I turned to him and I said, you can no longer speak in class unless the teacher calls you. And he said, okay. And that was the end of the notes. If the teacher had just said, he speaks without being called, which is a specific behavior, we would not be having 3 different attempts at controlling that. So that is what behavior is. It is not just bad behavior, good behavior. Behavior is behavior. Language is behavior. Speech, hitting others, sleeping, eating, laughing, all these are behaviors. So I'm putting up a few things on the screen, and I need you to look at it. If you can go to the next before this. Okay, so Matthew is angry. Matthew yelled at his brother. Matthew slammed the door in the teacher's face. Matthew is rude. Which of these are behaviors and which is not? Matthew's angry is not behavior. That's a label. What do we see in Matthew that makes him angry, that makes us think he's angry? Maybe he is hyperventilating, or maybe he has a frown on his face, or maybe he's gritting his teeth. Yes, those would be the things that you will talk about, because if you say somebody is angry to me, it may mean something, and to Camilla it may mean something else. Okay, Matthew is rude is also not behavior.
Right, so we're looking at measurable and observable. All of behavior has to be measurable in a certain level and then observable as well. So yes, you can see somebody exhibiting the elements of being angry, but the way that we would look at the behavior is what exactly is happening.
Okay, so having said that, next slide, we'll look at target behavior. So what then is target behavior? Parents, teachers, you're dealing with different behaviors in the classroom or at home. You need to be able to specify which one you are really interested in. Not just, that boy misbehaves. No. What exactly are you interested in? That boy needs to start speaking, or he needs to start asking questions, or he needs to start taking permission to leave the class or to go wherever he needs to go. But you have to pick one behavior or two or three at the most that you can focus on at a specific time. Those are the behaviors you target for change. Now, the target behavior can either be a behavioral excess or a behavioral deficit. An excessive behavior is that which we want to reduce or eliminate. For example, a child puts his hands in his mouth and plays with saliva, or he puts saliva on his toy and is playing with it. That's an excessive behavior that should not be happening. We want to eliminate that. So all the behaviors that you see in class or at home, they're either excessive or a deficit. A deficit will be a behavior that we want to increase, meaning it is not happening at the frequency that it needs to happen. So for example, some kids with autism will use only one word. So they need to go to the bathroom and they say, toilet. They need water and they say, water. What happens to, I want to go to the toilet? What happens to, I want water? What happens to, I need a break? Okay? Some don't even say, I need a break. They just attack the teacher because they need a break. So they are not operating at the level that they need to. That's a deficit. And for deficits, we need to increase it to the point where the individual is now able to communicate with the teacher or the parent.
And that includes skill development as well.
So these are sample behaviors. Next slide. Okay, Kwame puts his hand in his mouth. That's a very specific behavior. Ajua plays with saliva. Kojo is not talking. Greg walks up and down. Kwabena does not sit at the table. Mensa hits himself in the head. Ben bites himself. Those are specific behaviors that you may want to target and figure out, what do I do with this? Next slide. So all these behaviors happen for a reason. And the reason is oftentimes in the environment of the individual, whether it's a child or an adult, for you and for me. Whatever behavior we engage in is systematically influenced by the environment that we find ourselves. Okay? Behavior just does not just happen. Every behavior happens for a reason. And we need to know the reason for us to be able to change it or modify it the best way we can. All right? So what constitutes the environment of the person? Number one will be the person himself and what is going on within his skin. That's part of the environment of the child. Okay? If a child feels sick, you don't see on the inside, but you will see behavioral expression. And you may not know what is going on. It is within the skin of the person. Number one, environment. Number two, environment will be other people. Who are the people around that person who is engaging in a behavior? And what will be their response to the behavior that they see? If you respond appropriately, the behavior is maintained or reduced, or it happens the way you plan it. But if you do not respond appropriately, then there will be a problem. Maybe there will be an escalation of the behaviors. Okay? And the third part of the environment will be the physical space around the person. That would include light, sound, okay, the ambience, the things around the individual. All those can make behaviors happen or not happen. So once the target behavior is identified, the behavior we're interested in, we must identify those specific environmental events that may be maintaining the behavior. And one of the things we want to do today is to be able to identify those environmental factors that may be responsible for the behaviors. So, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, so behaviors, once you identify it, you need to describe what you mean. So for example, mom and dad, we want to work with our child at home. I am thinking that anytime, note what I'm trying to say, anytime he throws a tantrum, we are going to ignore. In my mind, tantrum means that he is rolling on the floor. Mom believes or understands that tantrum means it is when he is hitting himself. See, we can't do an intervention that way, because what I think tantrum is different from what mom thinks it is. So we need to define what we're trying to address so that mom and dad or the teachers can be on the same page. So we can say tantrum, have a definition, is any time he's rolling on the floor and screaming. So once we have that agreement, if I see him rolling on the floor, oh, that's tantrum, and I do what we've agreed to do. If she sees it, it's exactly the same thing. So we need to get to the point where, as a team of people, whether parents or as teachers, we must agree on what the behavior means, what the definition is. We have to describe the behaviors as well in such a way that it is observable and we can measure it. How many times did he tantrum? When he's tantruming, can you see it? Your definition has to be so clear. If you do not do it that way, there will be confusion. And if my response is different from mom's response, or if teacher A's response is different from teacher B's response, then the behavior will not change. In fact, it may get worse. Remember, we said the things that are in the environment and the responses in the environment can make the behavior better or worse. Now we go to recording. Yeah, next slide. There is absolutely no way you can practice behavior analysis without recording information about the behavior. If you do not record, there will be no basis for you to do any analysis or to decide on the interventions to use. So to be able to record is important. Mom and dad, it can be as simple as you can cope with, but you have to be able to record the behavior that you're interested in. And not just recording it, you have to be able to use the recorded behavior to make certain decisions. Recording the behavior helps us to determine whether intervention is required. Because sometimes a behavior may be so intense that you think it is happening more frequently than it is. So you need to be able to, record and use that information. Recording also provides information that helps us to determine the best treatment. Does this child need an OT, an occupational therapist, or this child needs a speech therapist, or this child needs a behavior therapist, or this child needs to see a psychiatrist or a neurologist? Knowing how the behavior is happening, seeing a record of how the behavior is happening can actually make this happen for us. Recording helps us to determine whether our intervention has produced the desired change. In Nigeria last week, I met a parent whose child was on a certain medication. And the medication is supposed to help the child sleep. But the child has really not been sleeping at night. But the child sleeps during the day. So she decided to stop the medication. And I said, why? She said, because the boy doesn't sleep at night. He wakes up at 2 a.m. So I stopped taking the medication. I'm like, no, you don't stop taking the medication. You go back to the doctor and say, he's not sleeping at night, but he sleeps throughout the day. What can we do? And then the doctor may suggest that, okay, instead of taking the medication at this time, take it at the other time, and come back to me after about 4 to 6 weeks to let me know what's going on. If you can track that, then you can get the help that you need. And tracking behaviors is not really difficult, and I'll share some data sheets with you. Go to the next, to ABC model.
Okay, so we have the ABC model. So ABC, we have A for antecedent, which is anything that happens just before the behavior. Usually we call those triggers. We have fast triggers and we have slow triggers. Fast triggers are things that happen right before, so something like getting a demand or being asked to do something that they don't want to. Slow trigger is essentially a setting event. So did you wake up and you were tired? Are you hungry? Are you hot? Are you feeling cold? So anything that really triggers that behavior. So if we look at example 1, Tommy asked Dad to play on his phone. Dad said no. But when she asks Mom, her mom says yes. So the circumstance under which she gets the phone is when Mom is not around. So that starts setting that precedent. So the child learns, okay, who do I go to for the things that I want? And then once Tommy learns, yes, thank you. Okay, so teacher called Kwame to come back to class. Kwame immediately slapped himself, and started crying. So what was the antecedent for this behavior? So the behavior itself is Kwame slapped himself. What was the antecedent? That was the teacher asking Kwame to come back to class, so being given a demand. So now we know, if we're taking data, we definitely see that when a demand is given, we see self-injurious behavior. So if we see a pattern in that, then we know what intervention goes in there. Mary only talks when her therapist is around. So what is the antecedent of talking behavior? It's the presentation of the therapist. So then we understand there's that antecedent that happens right before the behavior, then we know what to put in as an intervention. Speech therapist said to work with John to practice 3-letter words, but he cries and bites whenever we bring him to bring the workbook out. So what is the behavior? Crying, biting, and the antecedent is bringing the workbook out. So now we know that we need to put an intervention so that we reduce the crying and we make it a little bit easier to bring work out. So that's antecedent. Can we go to the next slide? Sorry. Maybe the next one.
Next one.
Please. So B for behavior for ABC model, and now we're on to C, consequence. So it's whatever happens right after the behavior. So we are trained to look at everything that happens in a sequence. So are the consequences good or bad? Not good or bad. It's more about, does it increase the behaviors or decrease the behaviors that we want or don't want? So if we look at consequences, any event or stimulus change occurring immediately right after the target behavior. So some of the examples here, the therapist told me to practice words with Kwame, but each time I try, he hits younger ones, so we stopped. So what is the behavior? It's Kwame hitting the little younger ones. What happens when Kwame hits, the practice words are taken away. So we're allowing that person to escape from going and doing their work. So, let's see. Each time Sean hit himself and bites his wrist, we go to ask what he wants, and the behavior keeps happening. So we have Sean hitting himself, biting himself, and when other people ask what he wants, we have the behavior continuing. So what we need to do is understand, okay, do we keep asking? What is that consequence? Is it increasing the behavior, continuing the behavior? Really important that we see the whole sequence, so that, and you train yourself to see the whole sequence so that you can know exactly what needs to go into place. Next slide, please. Okay, another example. Ade's job to clean the dishes after dinner. Betty tells him to do the dishes. He slaps himself in the face and bangs his head on the wall. Betty tells him to calm down and go to his room. So what do we have? Somebody being given a demand, somebody hitting himself, having self-injurious behaviors, and what is the result? The consequence is that he gets to go to his room. So is that really something that we want to see happening? And understanding that whole sequence allows us to understand, okay, we might be allowing them to escape. So what we need to do is change and put an intervention in place so that that doesn't happen. Next slide, please. So consequences maintain behaviors, things you do want or you don't want. So when we want something to increase, a behavior to increase or a behavior to decrease, we really need to understand the antecedent that happened before the behavior and the consequence that happens after the behaviors. Next slide, please. Okay, you want to take this?
All right. So essentially, what the ABC is all about is every behavior that happens in that sequence, like Camila was saying. Okay? For every behavior, there's an antecedent. And for every behavior, there's a consequence. So, parents and teachers, when a behavior is happening, remember we said you have to be specific about the behavior. When that behavior is happening, you need to think about what happened immediately before it that triggered the behavior, and what happened immediately after it. So, for example, you say bedtime, and the child slaps himself. And then you say, okay, come. And then you hug the child. The antecedent is you said bedtime. The behavior is he slapped himself. The consequence is he gets a hug. He has not gone to bed. So he's learned that anytime I don't want to do what mom and dad are saying, I slap myself and I'm going to get a hug. The behavior gets strengthened. And it continues to happen, and you wonder, but what's wrong? I give this child love, and this hitting himself continues to happen. Right? So every behavior that you see, there's an antecedent, there's a consequence. What do you do about those antecedents, and what do you do about those consequences? Those are the things that make the difference. Or you go to see a therapist and they say, you know what, your child is going to speak, but you just need to help them learn. So when you get back home, you need to practice these activities. And the moment you start the activities, the child bangs his head, cries, and all over, protesting. They don't want to learn it. So if I keep doing this, this child is just going to keep banging his head and keep rolling on the floor and all of that. If you stop, you just encourage the behavior, and that behavior is going to be stronger than even before you went to the therapist. So what we need to get to is understanding the consequences of your actions or inaction. it is not enough for you to say, I'm not going to do anything. Because if you don't do anything, that also affects the behavior. If you do something, it affects behavior. So you have to do something appropriate for the behavior to change. So this is a sample data sheet that you can use. Now, it doesn't need to be typed. It doesn't need to be printed on paper. You just need to, what do you want to track? In this case, I want to track how many times this behavior is happening. So just any simple thing will work as long as you're tracking. And if you have a therapist, maybe speech or OT or behavior therapy, they can help you design a simple data sheet that you can use. Next slide. This is a sample ABC data as well. You put the date, the time, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. And you just keep recording. Once you record for like a week, and you can look at the pattern, what is constantly happening before this behavior? You know your antecedent. What is constantly happening, or what do I always do after the behavior? You have the consequence, and then you can move on to, establishing that sequence. Next slide. The next one is a sleep chart. Maybe not very clear, but the idea is track the sleeping pattern. If the child is not sleeping at night, track the sleeping pattern. Okay? This has 7 a.m. all the way to 6 a.m. the next day. Track, and you'll be able to see when the child is sleeping or not sleeping. If you don't sleep, you're going to be miserable at work. If I don't sleep, I'm going to be very irritable. If your child does not sleep, the same thing is going to happen. And if that child does not know how to say, I'm tired, they will say it in forms of behaviors that you would say are inappropriate. So sleep is important, and you need to be able to track it if your child has a sleeping problem. Once you track it and you have an idea of when he sleeps and when he doesn't sleep, then you can speak to your psychiatrist or your doctor or whoever professional you're working with, and you'll be able to get an idea of what you need to do. So having said that, we need to move to the next, which is trying to figure out how to determine the reasons why behaviors occur. So the functional assessment section is where we talk about those reasons why behaviors happen. There are 4 major reasons why behaviors happen as we see it as behavior analysts. But before we get to those reasons, there are a few things I need to talk about. Number 1 will be medical or biological consideration. If a child has, let's say for example, the child has a rash in his bum, he's going to be putting his hand in his bum and it's going to be scratching. And you're going to think, oh, that's disgusting. But there's a rash there. And if you do not take care of the rash, that behavior is going to keep happening. Or your child has a dental problem. He's going to be slapping himself. And you'll think, stop slapping, stop slapping. But the issue is actually medical. So if a child has a medical issue, you need to see the medical doctor. There's no behavior plan that will work to take care of a medical problem. You need to take care of that medical situation. The next is to think about the diagnosis of the child. Autism has its specific peculiarities, the areas that are impaired. Okay, communication, behavior, social interaction, they're affected. So if you're going to work with them, you have to be mindful of that. If you have an individual who has pica disorder, pica is a condition that somebody with autism can also have, so you have both. And they can start eating things that are not edible, and you wonder what's going on. If you don't understand that the condition makes them eat things that are not edible, You just be saying, stop eating. But he will eat because he has that condition, unless you take care of that condition. Some individuals are on medication, and the medications actually cause other side effects, but you may not see the side effects, but their behaviors. An individual may take medication and not be able to fall asleep. Or if they fall asleep, they wake up very quickly. Or they become restless. Or they start having headaches and all those things. So if a child is on a medication, you need to know what the side effects of those medications are, so that if you are seeing the side effect, you know that this is a side effect and not really behavior because the child wants to be bad. Okay? So how do you know those side effects? Well, who prescribed the medication? So when you go see your doctor and they prescribe medication, one of the questions you ask is, Doc, what are the side effects I should look out for? So that when those side effects begin to happen, you can note them and report back to the doctor. But don't just take the medication, go and start administering and not be able to report back to the doctor as to what is going on.
If I could just also say, really important, think outside of the box when it comes to what your child is doing, the behaviors that you're seeing. Really important that you take into consideration the medical aspect of the source. So sometimes don't just, or all the times, don't just think this behavior, I need to get rid of it. Understand that we all react to things that happen to our bodies. We all react to things that make us feel good or bad. So yes, hitting the face, not wanting to eat, could be toothache. Sleeping issues, we see that all the time. Really important that you look and think outside the box when it comes to these types of things. Those are some of the questions that us professionals will be asking at the beginning before going into any of the behaviors, before going into anything else.
Yeah, and the other situations will be maybe hormonal changes. Children going through puberty, they don't understand what's going on with their bodies. And if nobody tells them in the way that they understand, you will see behaviors. For older female children, close to their menstrual period, you may start seeing behaviors. If they're not taught about what to do and how to respond, or you begin to figure out how you will take care of them around that time, you'll see behaviors. In fact, you may see aggression around that time for some of those individuals. Some people with special needs, autism or other forms of developmental disabilities, they like space to roam, to pace. But you keep saying, sit down, sit down, sit down. But the child feels like he or she needs to go around. Don't just stop it. Stopping it means you don't understand their bodies and what they're going through and their need for that kind of movement. If you need help with that, then you need to consult an OT and try to figure something out, or consult a behavior therapist and try to figure something out. Take them to a park, to a field where they can run around without hurting themselves. Now, having caregivers is also important. There are some caregivers that actually their presence may trigger the behaviors. Maybe because they're not treating the child right, not because they don't want to treat the child right, but they just don't know how. And so caregivers also need to be trained, because if they're not, then their presence will trigger behaviors, and you can have the best behavior plan in place, but the person that is supposed to implement is actually part of the situation. Now, we clapped earlier for siblings of people with special needs, right? Those siblings are really important for us to deal with. If you have a sibling with autism who is making noise at home, you know, young people are gonna yell at that child, stop! Why are you screaming? Why do you keep doing this? Blah, blah. They don't understand. But for some individuals, that screaming is actually what they want. If you scream at them, you make behavior stronger. So you have to figure out exactly what you need to do about the screaming behavior and the other maladaptives that you see. Noise level is another thing. How noisy is the environment? You see those individuals closing their ears. Why? Too noisy. Or maybe you're asking a question they don't want to hear. All those things can actually bother a person. Next slide. So once we've gone through all those things, then we go into the reasons why behaviors may occur. The first one is attention. We do things for a lot of attention. In fact, I have a client that I currently work with. In his case, he induces himself to vomit when he needs people to pay attention to him. You just see he will do, and then he throws up. And when it throws up, everybody will come, oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Exactly what he wants. The doctor told us there's no medical reason why he's doing it. And I have another lady, she wants to go out. Two things. She wants to go out and she wants attention. Very, so in her case, she takes anything that she can find and inserts it in her private. And when she does, everybody will, oh, you can't take it out, so we have to take her to the hospital. And the nice doctors and nurses will come around, oh my God, how did this happen? You shouldn't do this to yourself. It's gonna hurt you. Now I'm gonna bring the gynecologist to come and they're gonna take it out, and they'll take it out very delicately, put her in the room, and after a few hours she gets discharged. And when she's going back home, a big smile on her face. She's been able to go out and she's had a lot of attention. So people can do so many things just to get your attention. They can slap themselves just to get your attention. They can destroy property just to get your attention. If you do that ABC data, and you see that each time the behavior happens, what you do is give attention, it may mean that that behavior is happening for attention purposes. The next is doing things to escape. What does that mean? It means that the individual is looking to avoid something or escape something that is about to happen. It's time for your homework. Boom. And you say, okay, go to your room. What has happened? He's escaped doing the homework. It's bedtime. Headbang. Okay, come, hug. He's escaped bedtime. It's dinner time. He starts to cry. And you say, okay, you can keep playing. He is escaping from all those activities. And you and I also engage in escape behaviors. We engage in attention behaviors. So this is not just restricted to people with special needs. If I know that going out through this door, I'm gonna get a ticket from the police for loitering, I would decide not to go. I will go this way instead. When I do that, I am trying to escape what is out there. So escape behaviors can happen to anyone and everyone.
Yeah, we always take medication to get rid of headaches. We check the radio in the morning to avoid traffic. We all do it.
Tangible is the next one, seeking an item or an activity. I want to go out, but mom says no, so I'm going to run away. So you think, oh, he's running away. No, he wants to go out. He wants a toy, you say no, he slaps himself, and then you give him the toy. He wants to watch Sesame Street, you say, no, I'm watching my show. He throws something, and then you change the channel to his show. That is behavior happening for tangible reasons. I want your phone, and you say no, then I'm going to make your life miserable. I'm going to run away, or I'm going to take the TV and break it, or I'm going to go into the kitchen and break a plate, or whatever it is. Tangible reasons. And the last one is sensory stimulation, automatic reinforcement. These are behaviors that really appeal to the senses, and the individual enjoys engaging in those behaviors. So if I enjoy singing, for example, not because people will clap for me, but I just enjoy singing, the reinforcement is embedded in the singing. You see some people with autism are rocking back and forth. The reinforcement they get from the rocking is inside, embedded in that behavior. So if you're going to slow it down or change it or say stop it, you won't have much success because they enjoy engaging in it. And you can't just say stop rocking. Just like you see some people sitting down and they do that. Can somebody say to you, hey, stop tapping your feet? No. That is what we do, and we enjoy doing it. You wake up in the morning and you get a good stretch. When you stretch, you enjoy the stretching. The reinforcement is embedded in engaging in that behavior. So if you see somebody engaging in a behavior you think is inappropriate, but they don't need you to be present or absent, and they keep engaging in it, it is probably for sensory reasons. Next slide. Keep going. And now let's talk some interventions. Now remember that we said that the ABC model helps us to look at behaviors in sequence: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. The antecedents usually would trigger the behavior, and the consequence would maintain the behavior. Now the thing is, if you're planning an intervention, is it not better to prevent the behavior from happening? Yeah. So to prevent the behaviors from happening, what we focus on is your antecedent strategies. If you do antecedent strategies, the behavior will not happen. But sometimes you may do the antecedent strategies and the behavior still happens, then you would go into consequent interventions, which are interventions that you do after the behavior has occurred. So very quickly, let's look at some, antecedent strategies. The very first one here is pairing. You'll see that each time you take your child to the therapist or to school, the teachers try to play with the child. What they're trying to do is pairing. The child is not going to really play with you straight up because they don't know you, number one, and they think, who is this stranger, or who is this person who is going to make me do work? So instead of making them think that, all you need to do is try to pair yourself with so much of what the child already knows and enjoys doing. And by the time you get them into your space, you tell them to do anything and you keep doing it. I once worked with a boy who, he doesn't want to sit with anyone or do any table task or anything, but he loves dinosaurs. So at the intake, we had asked, okay, so what does your child like? Nothing but dinosaurs. Okay. So we got 2 dinosaurs, a blue dinosaur and a red one. So the child was going all around. He didn't pay attention to the therapist, and boom, he saw the dinosaur. From where he was, he ran down, and he was looking at the dinosaur. He didn't make any interaction, and the therapist was playing with the dinosaur and looked up. Would you like? Nodded yes. Okay, come. And then he sat down, and she gave the dinosaur, and he played with it, and he said, okay, I want my dinosaur back. She took it back. The boy was still sitting there. And then she said, do you want it again? Said, okay, touch your head. He touched it, said, oh wow, good touching your head. Okay, you can play with my dinosaur again. And then he played with it for a little moment. She took it back. I want my dinosaur back. And then they kept going back and forth. And before you know what's happening, the child is following the therapist's instruction. Touch your head, touch your nose, touch your legs, stand up, clap. He's following instruction. Because the therapist, who is a stranger, in the morning paired herself with a reinforcer that the child is actually used to, the dinosaur. So you can actually pair yourself with maybe is the child's superhero or favorite toy or whatever
bubbles.
it is.
Bubbles.
Or
Yeah.
whatever. Just get the child in. That's your pairing. Very first thing that you may want to try.
It's very hard to teach somebody that you don't have that bond with, that you don't have that relationship with, whether it's parents, teachers, anyone. You really need to have that bond with them. So building that is super important.
How about functional communication? Some people with autism will never use words to communicate. Parents, some parents, I'm sure every parent will want their child to use words, but it may not happen for some children. But that does not mean that they cannot communicate. And so, teaching a child functional communication, what that means is communication that is useful for the child and for the people around him. If he's not using words, can he use signs? If he's not using signs, can he use pictures? If he's not using pictures, can he use technology to be able to communicate with other people? If a person is able to communicate, so imagine I feel thirsty, my mouth is dry, I go get water. But a child with special needs may feel thirsty, not know how to say it, and is thirsty. So he's going to do whatever it takes to get that water. Maybe that would also include hurting himself, because when he hurts himself, you're going to come and say, what do you want? Why are you doing blah, blah, blah? And then you say, do you want this? Do you want that? And the moment you say, do you want water? Then he gets lighted up and then you give him water. Why should people get to that point before they get what they need? Functional communication is important. When you teach it, the individual is able to communicate, and a lot of behaviors can be eliminated. You need to teach, one of the things that teachers need to focus on is teaching a child how to say, I need a break. A child may not be able to go on for 45 minutes in class. What is the span of attention that the child has? If it's 10 minutes at a time, give them a break at 8 minutes before they engage in inappropriate behaviors. Give them that break so that the learning experience is positive.
And also remember with functional communication that if you're going to choose sign language, you also have to understand that their fingers and their hands must work well, and that everybody's going to learn it as well in their whole life, everybody who deals with them. It can't be just that child learning. So that's something to consider. What is the easiest method? What is the most functional method for the child, for the person, for their family, everything that's going to work functionally for them.
Yeah. Set rules and keep the rules. If it's the house rule that everybody goes to bed at 9, then everybody goes to bed at 9. The child understands that at this time, it's bedtime. At this time, we wake up. At this time, we do X and Y. In class, the same thing. If there's no rule, the child will be all over the place. And people with autism, a lot of them like routines that are set. So set the stage for them to be successful rather than for them to fail. Reduce or eliminate boredom. Now, each time I do presentations and I see a lot of people with their phones, it tells me that I'm becoming boring. Right? So imagine a child on the spectrum who feels like, I don't know what they're doing. That child will do whatever they feel is fun. It can be, and if that humming becomes louder and louder, it disrupts the entire class. Okay? So you have to get to a space where you ensure that this child is not bored. This child has things to do. And so you have to plan ahead. What is he going to do between this time and that, between this time and that, between this time and that? And if he decides not to do any of those, what will be the alternative? If you don't plan out that way, you're going to have chaos. And when you have chaos, that will be difficult to manage.
And one of the things I would add is when your child doesn't have anything that they can do, then you should know right away I need to start finding somebody who can teach them or teach them myself. Lots of different activities that they can learn to start, finish, so that they learn that they have other things that they can do. It's not just find something. They can't. They need to be taught.
Identify and manage precursor behaviors. So precursor behaviors are those that indicate that a major behavior or a major outburst is about to happen. So for example, I have clients that if I look at them and they are biting their lower lip, it means they're about to attack me. So when I see that, I can say, oh, okay, do you need a break? Or if I need to keep my distance, I keep my distance. Or if I need to suggest something else, I suggest something else. But you have to know those behaviors that indicate that this person is getting tired, or this person is getting bored, or this person is about to do something. I can look at the face and it can tell me maybe there's a frown or maybe the person is distant. I have a client who doesn't make eye contact. But the day he makes eye contact with you, it means something is coming your way. So when I see that eye contact, I know, okay, this guy needs a break today. All right? So you have to get yourself to the place where you know that child that you're working with. It could be a child or an adult. You know, at home, when my wife is not talking, I know something is happening. That is precursor for me. And then I start taking things easy. Otherwise, something is going to happen. Okay, next is you tell people to do things. Next slide. Task analysis. You tell a child to do laundry, for example.
Sorry, next slide.
Doing laundry is a lot of work for some people. You may enjoy doing it, but there are so many things that are included in doing laundry. And the child may just, that's too much work. But take your clothes to the laundry room is one thing. Okay, that's done, take a break. Put the clothes in the washing machine, that's the second thing. Add detergent, start the machine. Take the clothes out, put in the dryer, and your laundry is done. Take the clothes from the laundry to your bedroom. See, all those steps, for some people, just telling them to do everything at once can cause agitation. But telling them to do one step at a time may be the way to go. So the point is, when you're trying to get somebody to do something, especially those who do not have the patience to just start going through steps and steps, go one step at a time and allow breaks for the individual to be able to catch up. Prompt is another strategy that you could use. Help people to be successful, essentially is what it is. And whatever you need to do to help them to be successful is appropriate. It's not spoiling the child. It is helping the child succeed. And when we do things and we're successful at it, we feel good about ourselves. We feel motivated to do even more. But if they try it and they fail, there will be discouragement and unwillingness to go ahead with other tasks. So you have to use prompts, whether it is verbal or physical or gestural. I'm trying to get a child to use a pen. They can't even hold the pen, maybe for sensory reasons. But let's try to practice that. Hand over hand first. Use their hand, use their hand, use their hand, and then begin to fade out the physical prompt that you're using. And when you do that over time, you find out that the child is now able to hold the pen, use the pen, and they can begin to draw, they can begin to write, or they can begin to paint. The Primac principle, next slide. In this strategy, what people do is you think about simply two things. One that the child really likes to do, and one that the child does not really like to do. So my example here is the child likes to play on his iPad, but he does not like to do any worksheet. So you're going to say, first, do the worksheet, and then you play on your iPad. So the preferred task is always put at the end of the non-preferred task. If the child really wants to do the play on the iPad, they will have no choice than to do the worksheet. And if they do it, then you give them access to the iPad and they can play with it. If the child does not want to eat, but they want juice, put the juice at the end. First, you eat, and then you drink juice. And that is how the primary principle works. So first do this, and then you do the next. Next slide. To modeling. Next one. So using models is important, and it's effective for some individuals. They may not be able to follow your instruction, but if they see you doing something, they may be able to copy. If that is the kind of individual that you're working with, you present them with a model and help them copy. So I want my child to learn how to put on his pants. I'll give him his pants, and I'll take mine. Say, just do whatever I do. And so I go step, and then I pull up, and then I do the buttons or whatever else I'm able to do. And if the child is able to copy, he's learning. I'm going to write O, you write O. I'm going to write 1, you write 1. And if you practice and practice and practice, the individual is able to do a lot of modeling learning. On social stories. So social stories are creative and simple stories that are written about social events. So for example, we're going to a conference, or we're going to church, or we're going to a mosque. You can actually write a social story about going to a mosque and not making noise. Right? Some people are not able to cope with, it's too quiet. They have to make noise and write a social story. We're going to church. When we get to church, we'll sit at the back. Pastor Kwabina is going to be preaching. If you feel excited, go outside. When you come back from your trip outside, I'll give you a Smartie. And, so the child hears the story. This is what's going to happen. And if they understand that story and they work with it, you find out that you're not really doing any specific intervention. You're just reading them a story of what should happen. And if they follow through with it, you reinforce them beautifully. It is good for the individual to be able to take a break when they need to, than to disrupt the place or become too excited or become too overwhelmed by all the sensory things that are going on around them.
And part of that is also understanding how, like Lanray said, knowing how long they can be in an event and bringing them out, putting that in the social story, that we will take breaks and all of that. That's super important to helping them be able to self-regulate.
And next is going into videos. How many people learn things on YouTube? A lot. The other day, I couldn't figure out how to do my out-of-office assistant on Outlook, and I had to go on YouTube, and this is how to do it, and then I did it. Some people go to learn how to make up on YouTube. Some people go learn how to cook. Some people go on YouTube to learn which is the best jollof rice, Nigeria or Ghana. It's always a debate that is ongoing. But going on YouTube to learn things, important for some people who are able to learn that way. So having said that, we'll quickly go to the final stage, which is, using consequence strategies. Remember that ABC data again, antecedent, behavior, consequence. So we've talked about a number of antecedent interventions. The next is look at, okay, maybe it did not work, or we didn't start early and now there's a behavior. What can we do to address the behavior? So we'll be using consequence strategies. So for consequence strategies, we should try to encourage the behaviors you want to see. Any behavior you want to see, when it happens, reinforce the person. Praise them. Give them high five. Give them hugs. Whatever the child likes, do it at that time. If you do it multiple times, they know that the time that they get reinforcers or hugs or high fives is when they do something specific. And then they can make that association. OTs can actually assist. OT stands for occupational therapist. They can assist with identifying and developing preferred tasks. And if you have a preferred task, but the individual is struggling with the preferred task, they can actually help with developing adaptive ways to participate in those preferred activities. Okay, so your OT can be very important for you to consult with and get ideas about some of these things. So the strategies that you don't want to see, I mean the behaviors that you don't want to see, you would implement strategies that would discourage them. Okay, those are the things that we want to do under consequent interventions. So next slide, we'll look at something called differential reinforcement. And what that really means is you're not reinforcing everything. You're only reinforcing specific things that you want to see. And I'll talk about a few types that you may be able to try. So the first one is differential reinforcement of other behavior. What that means is trying to reinforce a behavior. I mean, trying to reinforce the absence of a behavior. So take, for example, Johnny always bangs his head. So I can say to him, and let's say he likes his iPad. I'll say, if you stay away from the wall, not bang your head, I'll give you the iPad for 30 minutes. So the iPad is a reinforcer, but the only way he can get it is if that inappropriate behavior is absent. So you will only give the reinforcer when the inappropriate behavior is absent. If you do not scratch me, then you can use my phone. But if you scratch me, no phone. So once he keeps his hands to himself, you give him the phone. If he scratches you, you take the phone. So differential reinforcement of other behavior is something that focuses on only praising the child or reinforcing the child when that inappropriate behavior does not happen. Okay? And the next one is differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, which means that whatever that inappropriate behavior is, look for the alternative and reinforce it. So for example, I was working with a guy who he has female teachers. Whenever the teacher goes in front of him to teach, he would put his hands out and grab them in the chest. And the teachers will move back. And so no teacher wanted that to happen. So they will keep him in one corner in the classroom and don't pay attention to him as long as he's quiet. And that's exactly what he wanted. He didn't want to do anything. So we thought that, why is he trying to grab them? And then we changed the teacher to a male teacher to see if what is going on is actually something related to females. And he also tried to grab the male staff as well. So it's just, he's grabbing people. Why is he grabbing people? When he grabs, what do? We leave him alone. So what we did is, what's the alternative to grabbing? Maybe he wants to be left alone. So we decided to teach him to say break. So whenever we go close and he puts his hands out, you pull his hands down and say break. And then it says break. Okay, you can take a break now. So we were reinforcing using his words to say break. So we did that multiple times, up to the point where he learned that when somebody is coming and he wants to be left alone, he will say break. In fact, we taught him to the point where once you open the door and you walk into the room, he'll just say break, and then we'll give him a break. So he was saying break, 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 and we were giving him the break. So when we got to the where he's now saying break, we had to fade out the breaking. He says break, we keep going, he brings his hand and say, okay, do this, and then you take a break. So he will do a task and then he takes a break. He will do a task and then he takes a break. And so now he can do tasks that are 7 minutes long, and then he will take a break. 7 minutes and then he takes a break. 7 minutes and then he takes a break. So he's not touching people to say, I want a break. He's actually using his words. So you see a behavior, instead of focusing on the inappropriate behavior, say, don't do this, don't do it. No. Think of the alternative. What do you want to see? Introduce that and reinforce that alternative, and then you can get what you need.
Yeah, think of those as replacement behaviors.
Exactly. Let's keep. Okay, so I'll go to the differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. So what that means is when somebody is engaging in an inappropriate behavior, you look for another behavior that is appropriate, that is incompatible with the inappropriate. So for example, I'm talking, I'm teaching, and I find out that Camille is falling asleep. So what I'm gonna do is call Camille up and say, hey, can you help me do this, blah, 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 blah. And as she's helping out, the sleep is gonna go away. So using her to assist in class is incompatible with sleeping. So she's gonna be a help in class, and I don't need to say, wake up, wake up, wake up. No, that may not work. Because when people are really sleepy, if you say wake up, they'll wake up and then go back to sleep, right? Almost right after that.
Other examples of that is if I have kids that hit or grab at people, I ask them to put their hands in their pockets when they're walking. That's an incompatible behavior because you can't hit and have your hands in the pocket.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of strategies we have.
Yeah, there's this other guy who he slaps himself in the head. So what we did was, whenever he's going out, we'll give him a backpack, okay? So each time he holds the backpack, so, you know what, I really like it when you hold your backpack. And we'll give him a treat, give him high five. And so he will actually come and say, I'm holding my backpack. You say, oh, wow, good job, keep your backpack. When his hands have the backpack, there's no hand to slap himself. So reinforcing holding the backpack is actually incompatible with slapping himself. So those are strategies that can be used to change behaviors without the individual even knowing that, you know, you're changing anything. And the next one is token economy. Token economy is a situation where the individual earns something small for specific behavior. So there was a point when my children were not really studying as much as I wanted to. So I said to them, you know what, both of you, my two girls, you have to encourage each other to study, all right? And do all your homework before 7 p.m. If you do that, so they have restaurants that they like to go to. So I got a picture of those restaurants and cut it into 5 different pieces. So on Monday, if they finish their homework before 7, they will put 1 piece on the fridge. So that 1 piece is there. On Tuesday, you see the younger ones say, we have to go do a homework because we need to get the 2nd piece. And they start encouraging each other. They get the 2nd piece. Then by Friday, the 5 pieces would have been on the fridge. And what does that mean? They're going to that restaurant. And then when they come back, they will pick the next restaurant that they're going to work on next week. All right? And that's how, you know, homework was getting done. They were working with each other. Shopper, wake up, wake up. It's almost 7. We have to go do our homework. That is token economy. You're giving small reinforcers for a bigger reward that is going to happen later on. And if you're able to build that up to a point, you'll find out that the individual is continuing to do what you're doing. The other example I can give about that is a guy who was banging his head on the wall. And we tried different things, he would just bang. And we found out that he was banging because he loved coffee, and the staff always choose not to give him coffee because they think it's too much for him, and other people living in the home will be asking for coffee. So we instituted a token economy strategy. And what did we do? Every 15 minutes, you'll give him a token. Every 15 minutes, okay? So in 2.5 hours, he would have accumulated 10 tokens. So when he gets one, he will go, oh, I have 2. Oh yeah, you need 8 more. And then he will keep going. And how can he get the token? Stay away from the wall. So he was preoccupied with accumulating the tokens. And if he's thinking about tokens, the way to get it is don't bang your head. And so every 2.5 hours, when he gets 10 tokens, he will go to any of the staff and say, I want coffee. And they say, where are your tokens? They count it together. 10. Okay, let's go get coffee. So that way, he no longer had to bang his head to get coffee. He just needed to buy the coffee by presenting 10 tokens that he was going to work for. And that's how token economy works.
Yeah, we use it for kids or adults to gain access to things all the time. And it could include their chores that they need to do. It could include, like Lanray said, their homework. It could be anything. But the tokens themselves are the smaller reinforcers. So you can even make them anything that you want. It could work for your employees as well. You can have them doing all the different things that they need to do. And then at the end of the month or at the end of each week, there's something in it for them. So.
Okay, and the next one is timeout. Timeout, I'm sure a lot of you have used timeout as a strategy. And what you do is send a child to somewhere and say, hey, you're in timeout. But timeout actually means time out of a reinforcing environment. So the environment has to be reinforcing for timeout to work. If you send somebody to timeout and they just go right away, that's not timeout. It means the environment is not reinforcing. In fact, they don't want to stay where you are. And so the behavior is probably not going to change. If you say timeout and the parent, oh, please, mommy, that means the environment is good for them. They don't want to leave. Say, no, go to timeout. And when they go to timeout, the timeout has to be a place where there's nothing fun. Don't send people
Not
to
their
timeout.
room.
Sorry?
Yeah, not their room.
No, not their room. If you send a child to timeout in their room, that's where the toys are. So they'll just go and play. And the reason why you send them is defeated. If you say go to timeout, don't send them to timeout where there are things on the wall to read, because the child is going to start reading. Don't send them to timeout where the switches are, because the child is going to press the switch. And then you say, who's turning off the light? And say, it's me. Why are you turning it off? Sorry, mommy. You need to stop doing that. Okay, I'm not going to. You're having a conversation. That's not timeout. So timeout, go to a place, not here, because the child will be reading GTBank Annual Workshop. Blank. No reinforcement, nothing. And then, when they get there, and boredom is setting in, that is when you could call them back. Don't keep it too long enough for the child to fall asleep. Once they are asleep, that's not timeout, because they would have forgotten why they were there, and you will go and carry them from there and say, oh, my baby. The message is